Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, right here in New York. This was AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, and wanted to attend this show, but I didn't end up going, and it was hard to get tickets when the tickets went on sale because they sold out in like an hour, 2 hours during the pre-sale, I remember. But AEW will be back here in New York in December at the new UBS Arena in Long Island. That's going to be the new home for the New York Islanders hockey team. So they're going to be there in December, AEW. Hopefully I attend that show, but who knows? Want to attend. But for attendance there at Arthur Ashe Stadium tonight, there was 20,177 fans there. And the crowd there, from watching on TV, was loud. They were awesome. When wrestling comes here to New York, we know how to make some noise. Us fans know how to make some noise. And, it puts off a good reaction. But Dynamite Grand Slam tonight, it was a awesome, great show tonight. It was a perfect show. We had Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson, MJF versus Pillman Jr., the rematch Malakai Black versus Cody Rhodes, Sting and Darby Allin end up facing FTR, and the main event for Dynamite Grand Slam tonight was Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho for the AEW Women's World Championship. The overall Dynamite Grand Slam was an awesome show. It was a perfect, great show, and it was a hyped up show. The card for the show was stacked, and it felt like a show on pay-per-view. This felt like a show that could have been on pay-per-view, but only it was on Dynamite. And then we're going to have AEW Rampage this Friday, which is going to be 2 hours. So it's going to be SmackDown first for WWE from 8 to 10, and then AEW Rampage after SmackDown from 10 to 12. So I'm really looking forward to those 2 hours of Rampage. After it's over, I'm not going to do a SmackDown and AEW Rampage review after Rampage goes off the air, because the time I do the review and edit it all, the video will be going up around like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I know a lot of you are probably sleeping or not even on YouTube at that time of the night. So I will review both SmackDown and Rampage on Saturday. So that's going to be coming up on Saturday. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But anyways, let's jump right into the review. So AEW Dynamite Grand Slam from Arthur Ashe Stadium opened up tonight with Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. The AEW World Championship was on the line, and this was a great, perfect match. This match was a classic, in my opinion. You have two of my favorites, Omega and Bryan Danielson. I was surprised that they started this match off to open the show, which, in my opinion, this match should have been the main event. I think that they should have booked this match to be the main event of the show. I mean, when you watched this match, it screamed a main event match, in my opinion. So you had the crowd going wild for the match. They really popped. They were very excited to see Omega and Bryan Danielson in the ring and them finally having this match. I mean, it was expected that the crowd was going to go wild during this match. So the match started with Omega and Bryan. They end up having a quick back and forth in the middle of the ring. They end up locking up. And once they locked up, the crowd was popping so loudly at that. They were excited to see what was going on right there as the match started. And Bryan and Omega end up going back into the ropes. Bryan ended up delivering a leg kick to drop down Omega. So it was back and forth once again between Omega and Bryan. Omega ended up getting to the ropes, and Bryan ended up beating him in the midsection with a kick, and Omega went out of the ring. Omega then ended up coming back. He ended up dropping Bryan down. Omega then ended up doing the cartwheel to avoid Bryan and delivered a chop to Bryan. So Bryan ended up bending back Omega's fingers. Bryan then trapped Omega in the canvas, started stomping down on Omega's arm and his hand. Bryan started delivering some chops and kicks to Omega, which Omega was sent out to the floor. Bryan then delivered a nice suicide dive, which sent Omega into the barricade. Both Bryan and Omega went back to the ring. Bryan went up to the top rope. He delivered a knee drop down onto Omega's arm. So Omega then raked Bryan's face to slow things down. Omega then took control of the match, started choking Bryan with his foot in the corner. Bryan was able to work his way back, and he ended up running to the corner, flipped over Omega, and dropped Omega with a leaping clothesline, which was awesome. So Bryan then delivered a running kick in the corner and delivered some kicks to Omega's chest. Bryan then put Omega on the top rope, and he delivered a Hurricanrana. Bryan went for the cover. Omega kicked out at 2. So Omega ended up getting back up, and he delivered a Hurricanrana of his own to Bryan Danielson, which sent Bryan out to the floor. Omega then ended up flipping down on Bryan on the outside. Both Omega and Bryan went back into the ring. They were both trying to go for pin attempts. So we had Bryan was able to lock in a mutilation, but Omega ended up getting the foot on the rope quickly. And this matchup went over 30 minutes. So they gave great amount of time to Omega and Bryan here for this match. So we had Omega delivered a snapdragon suplex on the ramp to Bryan. And the ramp was plexiglass over the LED monitors. It was over scaffolding also, which had to hurt badly. So Omega then ended up heading up to the stage. He ended up running down the stage and blast Bryan with a V-trigger, which Bryan then ended up going back into the ring, selling that V-trigger shot. So Omega kept the pressure on Bryan, delivered a buckle bomb that sent Bryan down the ramp. And Omega then delivered a top rope missile drop kick. Went for the cover. Bryan kicked out at 2. So we had Omega delivering a heel kick to Bryan's spine. He was looking to go for the V-trigger to the back of the head of Bryan in the corner. So both Omega and Bryan were trading back and forth strikes. Bryan then delivered a shoulder cap suplex with the bridge. Went for the cover, which Omega kicked out at 2. So Bryan ended up heading up to the top. He got knocked down by Omega. Both Bryan and Omega went back up to the top. Omega then ended up hitting a Super Dragon suplex to Bryan. He went for the cover. Bryan kicked out at 2. And we had a reaction from the crowd. They were chanting "Fight Forever," which was awesome. So Omega delivered a V-trigger. He was looking to go for the one-winged angel, but Bryan ended up countering that. He went right into the Poison Rana on Omega. Omega ended up trying to go for V-trigger again, but Bryan moved out of the way. Bryan ended up delivering a buzzsaw kick to Omega's head. So Bryan right here, he was getting fired up, and he was trying to go for the running knee, but it got blocked by Omega. Omega then delivered the V-trigger to Bryan's face, went for the cover. Bryan kicked out at 2, which was a shock there. So the crowd was on their feet. They were loving what they were seeing in the ring with these two guys. So Omega ended up going up to the top to deliver a Phoenix Splash, but Bryan ended up moving out of the way. Bryan started delivering some more kicks to Omega, and at this point, it was 25 minutes into the match. So Bryan was delivering some kicks to Omega. Bryan was trying to go for the label lock, but Omega got his foot on the rope before Bryan could apply it. Bryan then delivered running knees in the corner to Omega. Omega came back up, delivered the V-trigger. Both Bryan and Omega were down. And there was only 45 seconds left of the match up here. So the match could win, of course, by pinfall or submission. So did either Omega or Bryan attempt that? Well, both Omega and Bryan were on their knees. They were throwing punches. They were throwing headbutts at each other. They were just destroying each other. So they were both just still doing that. And the bell ended up ringing, and the match went to a draw. So we had a draw finish here. So post-match, Bryan ended up trying to keep attacking Omega. And then we had the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick, and the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson. They ended up coming in, and they saved Omega. So we had Adam Cole out there, and the Young Bucks, they ended up delivering a triple super kick to Bryan. Out came Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express, and we had the Elite end up escaping the ring. Want nothing to do with Cage and the Jurassic Express. So, but that was that. But we all know now, after this match went to a draw, we're going to get Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega once again. And their rematch is going to be coming at Full Gear. So in November, we'll be seeing Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson 2 at Full Gear. So, and I think Bryan Danielson might want Kenny Omega to put the AEW World Championship on the line. So I sense that happening at Full Gear in November. So we're going to get it. We're going to get it, guys. And they're going to deliver another great match there at Full Gear. So, but overall, this was a perfect match. It was a great match. Classic match, in my opinion. And I kind of see why this wasn't the main event. If they would have put this as the main event, which I would have loved if this was the main event, like I said earlier. But if they were going to do a draw, I think that would have sent the crowd home pissed off. And, you know, Tony Khan is not going to let something like that happen. So, now I understand why. Now, if Omega or Bryan got a pinfall or submission, and if it was the main event, I think it would have been great. But, you know, with them doing a draw, it's just going to keep their feud going. And their next match is going to be coming at Full Gear. So I can't wait until that happens. But overall, really enjoyed this match. The crowd really loved it. And, you know, it got you hyped throughout the match. And then we had CM Punk end up coming out. CM Punk headed out to the ring, and he got on the mic. Punk ended up saying that he's glad that he didn't have to wrestle after that match. He ended up saying that it's been a long time since pro wrestling has been in New York City. And yes, don't count the MSG show that WWE had almost 2 weeks ago. I mean, good pro wrestling, not sports entertainment. So Punk ended up saying that people want to see him get mad, like the old CM Punk. And he'll be along at some point. But be careful what you wish for. Punk then turned his attention to Team Taz. He ended up saying that he wants to be mad. So he then recalls getting put down on a table last week, which of course Hobbs ended up putting Punk on the table, but the table didn't break. Punk ended up saying that Team Taz doesn't want to see a love fest. They don't want to see him happy and have a good time. He ended up saying that it's been so long since he's had this, and that it pisses him off because nobody is taking wrestling away from him. Punk then ended up telling Team Taz that he should have broke his neck so tonight's crowd wouldn't be able to hear Cult of Personality, and that they made a big mistake. He ended up saying that it's not his job to wake other wrestlers up. It's to put them to sleep. So Punk then ended up saying that on Friday's Rampage, Hobbs is going to sleep. So that was what Punk had to say. Of course, good promo from Punk, good segment. We also saw Stephen Amell make an appearance. He was sitting in the front row, and Punk ended up giving Stephen Amell a hug, and that was that. But Stephen Amell, he's on the new show, Heels, which is on Stars, which is a awesome show. If you guys haven't checked out Heels, definitely check it out. Great show. CM Punk is in the 3rd episode of that series. It is worth watching. Comes on every Sunday night. Definitely give Heels a watch. And I like Stephen Amell, from Arrow. He was great as Green Arrow. Well, overall, good segment from CM Punk. So then we had MJF versus Brian Pillman Jr. MJF came out along with Wardlow, of course. Brian Pillman Jr. came out along with Julia Hart. And this was a good match here. And I found this off of Ringside News that I want to mention, because for some reason I find this funny, but in a MJF heelish way. So there was a photo on Twitter that featured MJF's parents, and they held up a sign that said, "We're MJF's parents, and we think he sucks too," which I find that funny. So MJF's mother ended up cutting a promo, and she ended up saying, "We want to apologize to the world. He is a fucking idiot, but he's ours." So then MJF replied to that photo. He replied back to that photo, and he ended up saying, "Fuck off, Mom," in typical MJF heel persona. So, but you just gotta love MJF. He is one of the best heels in AEW. So you gotta love his heelish style. So, but just had to mention that little piece of funniness news there. But the match started off with both MJF and Pillman going back and forth. Pillman was looking to get the best of MJF. He delivered a couple of arm drags to MJF, delivered a back body drop. So MJF delivered a chop to Pillman's chest, which it annoyed him. It annoyed Pillman. So Pillman came back, delivered a chop to MJF's chest, and he delivered a kick to MJF's chest. So MJF was then able to get back into the match. He delivered a kick in the corner to Pillman. He flipped Pillman into the corner. He then started taunting the crowd a little bit. So Pillman came back. He was able to put MJF down, delivered a backslide pin, which MJF kicked out at 2. So MJF ended up yelling at the crowd. He was like, "Where's your boy?" So Pillman came back, started delivering some chops, and he headed up to the top. He delivered a high cross body off the top to MJF. So MJF then ended up hitting a clothesline and then a thrust kick to MJF, which he then sent MJF into a turnbuckle. MJF then rolled out to the floor. Pillman was looking to go for a dive, but MJF ended up pulling Julia Hart in front of him. So MJF ended up shoving Julia Hart to Brian Pillman, and then he ended up decking Pillman. So Julia Hart then threw down her pom-poms. She started yelling at MJF. Julia Hart then slapped MJF in the face, which pissed him off. And MJF ended up grabbing Hart's wrist. And then Pillman delivered a drop kick through the ropes. And he ended up giving a high five to Julia Hart. Pillman was looking to go for a springboard. MJF ended up catching him with the salt of the earth in the middle of the ring. And so Pillman ended up tapping. So there you go. MJF ended up winning the match, which was obvious. We all knew that MJF was going to win. So you really think MJF is going to lose to Bryan Pillman Jr.? So yeah, MJF ended up getting the win. Overall, this was a good match. And I know MJF is going to be featured when AEW goes to UBS Arena in December, because, of course, he's from Long Island. So I already know that the Long Island fans there are going to be applauding him. And then we had Alex Marvez. Alex Marvez was backstage. He was talking with Chris Jericho and Jake Hager about their match Friday on Rampage against Men of the Year. You know, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. You know, Dan Lambert. Hager ended up saying that they are more like a bunch of boys following around a fat-faced dipshit. Of course, he was referring to Dan Lambert. So Hager was pretty much talking about Page and Scorpio Sky. Jericho went on to say that they are the toughest team in AEW, him and Hager, and that Dan Lambert decided to put his nose in their business, and that he's going to bite it off. Jericho ended up saying, bring the rest of American Top Team, because they are ready for Rampage. So that was what they had to say, but that match is going to be taking place this Friday on Rampage. So it's going to be a good match between them. And then we had the rematch. Cody Rhodes versus Malakai Black. So we had Malakai Black making his entrance first. Always awesome when Malakai Black does his entrance. Every time we see it, it gets more and more awesome. And then Cody Rhodes came out along with Arn Anderson. And then we saw the return of Cody Rhodes' wife. Of course, Brandy Rhodes. So she ended up returning tonight by her husband's side. So this was a good match up here. So the match started with back and forth strikes from Black and Rhodes. And Cody in this match, he was getting a mixed reaction from the crowd. Because everyone wants to see Malakai Black beat Cody. And with the crowd giving Cody a mixed reaction, There's no point that soon we're going to be seeing Cody Rhodes turn heel. So we had Black and Rhodes. They were striking each other, going back and forth. Black delivered a front leg sweep to Cody. So the crowd was loving Malakai Black attacking Cody Rhodes, and the crowd was booing Rhodes. Rhodes went out to the floor. Black ended up doing his fake leap, and he ended up moonsaulting back into the middle of the ring. Brandy ended up flipping off Malakai Black, and he was just laughing at that. Cody ended up coming in, and he ended up attacking Malakai Black from behind. Black ended up trying to go for a pin, but Rhodes ended up kicking out at 2. Rhodes was looking around at the crowd, and of course, he got nothing but boos. So Cody ended up leaping off the top rope, and he ended up eating a high knee from Malakai Black to his face, to Rhodes' face. So they went back into the ring. Rhodes delivered a pin, which Black ended up kicking out at 2. Black ended up delivering a wheel kick to Cody, and Cody ended up falling straight out of the ring, which was crazy. Black ended up running out. He tried to pull Cody back into the ring, but he couldn't do it. So he just left Cody out there, and the referee was counting. So Cody ended up climbing up. He delivered a pin, but he ended up getting the foot on the rope. Cody then delivered a chop block to Black, and Black ended up knocking Cody out the ramp. So Black delivered a spinning back elbow to Rhodes and a kick to the chest. So Rhodes came back. He delivered a crossroads, but couldn't get it. So Cody ended up delivering a kick to Black's leg. He tried to go for the bulldog, but Black ended up sending Cody across the ring. And we had Cody end up hitting a cutter. He ended up delivering the crossroads, and he went for the cover. And Black ended up kicking out at 2. So Arn Anderson was on the apron. Arn then ended up slipping off of the apron. He got back up. He ended up getting clocked by Cody because Black moved out of the way. So Arn then fell to the floor. Cody ended up checking on Arn out there. And Arn was yelling at Cody. He was like, "What are you doing out here? Don't worry about me." So Cody then went and focused back on Malakai Black. So they went back to the ring. Cody was swinging away at Malakai Black. Black then delivered the black mask to Cody's face. He then went for the cover. And there you go. Malakai Black ended up winning the match, which was, of course, the right decision. Glad that Black got another win over Cody. This is going to lead to, like I said, Cody turn heel. So whenever Cody comes out again, he's going to get nothing but boos from the crowd. And that's going to set him off, turn heel. But overall, this was a good match, a good rematch between Rhodes and Black. Not the last time that they're going to be facing each other. I think we're going to be getting another match with Rhodes and Black at Full Gear. So that should be coming at that pay-per-view. So then they went over what we're going to see next week on Dynamite. We're going to be getting Miro versus Sammy Guevara for the TNT Championship. That should be a good match there. Miro defending the TNT Championship against Sammy Guevara. So looking forward to that. And then we had FTR versus Sting and Darby Allin. Of course, FTR came out along with Tully Blanchard. Very good matchup here. Very good tag team match. So Darby Allin started off the match, and Sting ended up coming in. He got a nice pop from the New York crowd here. So Sting ended up taking down both Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler. started delivering punches to both of them. And he ended up delivering some body slams to both Harwood and Wheeler. Sting tried to go for the Stinger Splash, but he couldn't end up doing it. So Harwood ended up coming in, delivered a leg drop to Sting, went for the cover. Sting ended up kicking out at 2. Sting tagged in Darby Allin. Darby Allin was flying around the ring. He ended up drop kicking Wheeler into Harwood. He then delivered a coffin splash in the corner and a springboard coffin splash into both Harwood and Wheeler. Darby Allin was looking to go for a double coffin drop out to the floor. He was then caught by Harwood and Wheeler, and he was thrown into the edge of the ring. So Darby Allin was then getting beat up on by FTR. So Darby Allin ended up rolling through FTR, and he ended up tagging in Sting. So Sting delivered a spine buster on Harwood, a nice spine buster. He went for the cover. Harwood kicked out at 2. We had the crowd chanting, "You still got it," to Sting. Wheeler was then shoved off the top rope to the floor by Sting. Sting went up to the top. He delivered a crossbody, which was awesome. He delivered the crossbody on Harwood. He went for the cover. Harwood kicked out at 2. Cash Wheeler then yanked Sting over the top rope. And Sting avoided a tombstone pile driver. At this point in the match, Darby Allin was getting involved in the match again. Stinger ended up hitting a Stinger Splash on Harwood and then another one on Wheeler. Harwood then was shown putting a chair in the corner. Sting was looking to go for a splash on Harwood, and he didn't hit the chair, so he ended up throwing Harwood into the chair. Sting ended up hitting Tully Blanchard off the apron because Tully Blanchard got on top of the apron. So Sting ended up getting the pin on Harwood for a 2 count. Sting locked in the Scorpion Deathlock. Wheeler was trying to help pull Harwood to the ropes. And Darby Allin here delivered a awesome looking coffin drop down on the apron on Wheeler. Man, that spot there from Darby Allin doing that coffin drop on the apron looked awesome. So Harwood was kept in the middle of the ring, still locked in the Scorpion Deathlock by Sting. Harwood tapped out. So there you go. Sting and Darby Allin ended up winning the match. Overall, this was a good tag team match. Gotta love Sting and Darby Allin. They make a great team. And that spot with Darby Allin doing that coffin drop onto the apron on Wheeler was awesome. That was a good spot there in the match. And then they went over what we're going to see this Friday on Rampage for 2 hours. So we're going to be seeing Anna Jay versus Penelope Ford. Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston versus Lance Archer and Minoru Suzuki in a lights out match. That's going to be a very good match up there. Looking forward to that match. You know, Moxley and Suzuki are going to go at it once again. We're going to have the Lucha Brothers, Santana and Ortiz versus Private Party and the Butcher and the Blade, of course, of the Hardy family office. Santana and Ortiz, they're going to get a huge pop from the New York crowd there. CM Punk versus Powerhouse Hobbs. Obviously, CM Punk is going to win it. Jericho and Hager versus Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky with Dan Lambert. Jericho and Hager, in my opinion, are going to be winning that match unless Dan Lambert or somebody from the American Top Team gets involved in that match and costs Jericho and Hager the match. Then we're going to see Adam Cole and the Young Bucks versus Christian Cage and Jurassic Express. So that's going to be another good match up there. But Rampage on Friday, looking like a good 2 hours worth of pro wrestling. So, looking forward to the show. And then we had the main event. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, versus Ruby Soho for the AEW Women's World Championship. Of course, Britt Baker ended up coming out along with Jamie Hayter and Rebel, of course. So we had the crowd. They were divided with Baker and Soho. We had chants of Ruby Soho and DMD chants. So the match started with Ruby Soho. She was able to get a shot in on Britt Baker, which sent her out to the floor. So we had Jamie Hayter and Rebel. They were checking in on Britt Baker. Ruby Soho ended up going up to the top rope. She ended up delivering a splash down on both Rebel and Hayter, Jamie Hayter. Britt Baker delivered a super kick and a twisted neck breaker down on the floor to Soho. Soho then used her legs, ended up slamming Britt Baker's face into the second turnbuckle. And Soho then connected with that, delivering some running kicks to Britt Baker's head. Britt Baker came back, delivered an elbow strike. Ruby Soho ended up countering with a side suplex and a thrust kick to Baker's face. So we had back and forth shots from both Baker and Soho. So Baker ended up rolling through into the lockjaw, but Ruby Soho ended up slipping out of it. Baker delivered a sling blade. Rebel ended up slipping on the black glove on Britt Baker as Baker ended up flipping off the camera. Ruby Soho ended up picking Britt Baker's ankle and applied a single leg crab. Soho then ended up sending Britt Baker to the corner, delivered an enziguri. Baker then delivered a neck breaker and a thrust kick to Soho's face. Went for the cover. Soho kicked out at 2. Baker then went up to the top rope and Soho ended up smacking her. Soho was looking to go for the suplex to Britt Baker out to the floor. And Jamie Hayter and Rebel were like to Soho, "Don't do that. Do not do that." So Soho and Baker were battling their way to the corner. And Baker ended up kicking Soho out to the floor. Baker was looking to go for a kick while she was standing on the steps, which Ruby Soho ended up catching the kick. And Baker then slammed Soho face down on the steps. So she ended up bringing Soho into the ring. She was stomping on Soho. Went for the cover. Soho kicked out at 2. And Britt Baker wasn't happy about that. She was barking at Aubrey Edwards. So Soho had a roll-up on Baker, which Baker kicked out at 2. Rebel had a distraction, and we had Soho end up taking out Rebel. Jamie Hayter was on the apron, and she ended up yanking Ruby Soho down over the top rope. And that led for Britt Baker to drop Ruby Soho and apply the lockjaw on Ruby Soho, and Ruby Soho ended up tapping out. So there you go. Britt Baker wins the match, retaining the AEW Women's World Championship. Overall, this was a good women's match. This was a good main event. And Britt Baker still continues to be our AEW Women's World Champion. And she's going to get a lengthy run as the champion. And that was how Dynamite Grand Slam went off the air tonight. Overall, this was a great show. This was a perfect show and very enjoyable. And I hope AEW comes back to Arthur Ashe Stadium. And if they do, I am definitely possibly going to attend the show. If I can get tickets, because we all know AEW tickets go quick. I mean, look at this show. Look how quick the tickets went when they had the pre-sale. They sold out in an hour. That's how quick AEW tickets sell out. So it's all a matter of getting tickets, and if I could, score myself a ticket. So if they come back to Arthur Ashe Stadium, I would definitely go. Like I said, if I could get a ticket. Because like I said, we all know how quick AEW tickets go. But anyways, that's it for my review of Dynamite Grand Slam. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all later.